we're also focusing our attention on a measure by the U.S. government, which essentially is designed to go after Huawei and prevent chips from being shipped to Huawei. In fact, Taiwan Semiconductor may have to stop shipping chips to Huawei, and this is having some major ramifications regarding trade. Joining us to discuss this is Paul Scanlan, Huawei CTO, the Chief Technology Officer from the Carrier Business Group, as well as Akiko Fujita, who covers Huawei for us here at Yahoo Finance. Akiko, let me invite you in to ask the first question, because you know all of these people firsthand. Akiko?
Thanks for that, Adam and Paul. It's good to talk to you. You, of course, are right in the middle of your analyst day in Shenzhen right now, and I was struck by how downbeat the tone was in the speech from your rotating chairman today. I'm curious, as you look to what the Commerce Department has now done, which is essentially to extend these sanctions, how does that affect the timeline of the 5G rollout, given that you were already a little behind, especially in places like Europe, because of the coronavirus?
Well, that's a complicated question that you've asked, right? And only the US knows why the US does things. I think your colleague a moment ago said things like, the US has decided to go after Huawei. So, this damages trust around the world, unfortunately. So it's very disappointing. Huawei operates in 170 countries, 172, in fact. And personally, I speak with a lot of the presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, most of the CEOs of most of those corporations that we do business with. And we talk to all 170 except 172. It would be very nice if we could have the right sort of discussion with the US government to try and understand, maybe you don't like Huawei, but why do you need to go after us, belligerently, always trying to attack us? Because what you've done now is you've really upset global trust. I mean, I was just thinking, myself, I've got a car. I wonder if it's using any American components, because I don't know whether tomorrow or the next day, whether I'm going to be able to use it or service it, for example. Is that not what's going on at the moment? I mean, the US always stood for trust. It stood for collaboration, stood for innovation. And now you're systematically going after a company because, as some of your colleagues have mentioned, we're the leader in 5G.
Having said that, Paul, Goping was pretty clear that this has affected your business. And he said, we're still trying to figure things out. So I'm trying to understand what this means for 5G, which is exactly what you oversee. Has the timeline been pushed back as a result?
Look, of course it has. It's been pushed back as a result, very specifically because of the COVID-19. That's the first problem we have. But as you would have seen from our numbers, certainly from last year, not just R&D expenditure going up, and you can understand we've been pouring R&D effort, but also an inventory. So those sorts of things, those two things, have been designed to try and put Huawei on a path that provides diversification of supply chain. That's what happens when you have these things. As of February, we had 91 contracts for 5G signed, and these are commercial contracts, together with about 700,000 5G base stations installed globally. And unfortunately, what's going to happen now, so you're asking exactly what's going to happen from a Huawei perspective, but it's global. We have a significant market share compared with the other vendors. And what's going to happen now is you're going to slow down the deployment of 5G potentially. And remember, 5G is a platform for transformation. And this is the part that's very difficult to understand. This type of action, instead of trying to fix the world, instead of trying to collaborate and make improvements, what this type of action does is, prevents collaboration, it prevents innovation, it prevents development of the use cases that everybody, that 5G held hope for to be able to deploy.
Paul, when you talk about this being a global situation, there's an expectation the Chinese government will respond to the U.S. This could escalate. The U.S. in the past has pressured U.S. allies to stop perhaps doing business on 5G with Huawei. Do you think this could get out of hand and have further damage to Huawei?
So, Adam, I'm fundamentally a technologist, but I'm also a person that does a lot of business cases, and I develop a lot of the scenarios of how we use technology to transform things, transform industries. You have a look at my career, you have a look at all the companies I've worked for, and what you're now asking me is what do I think? Yeah. What do I think will happen if the US does that, and would China do that, and things like that? So I'm not really in the business of suppositions, right? I'm in the business of facts, technologies. How do we use technologies to improve things? How do we collaborate better? How do we talk about the facts rather than I think this and I think that? Paul Scanlan doesn't think. What Paul Scanlan says is that based on certain facts and evidence, we know, we have tested things, we've piloted these use cases. We've seen, for example, what the power of 5G technology through collaboration, through partnerships. It's not Huawei alone, in China, in Wuhan, in trying to, stem the flow of the infection that's been done here. And I think you'd have to admit that China's done a pretty good job in that regard because of technology, combination of 5G, AI, cloud-based solutions. A lot of those things were founded on, a lot of great American technology, a lot of great European technology. So, it's unfortunate to have to say, what do I think about these sorts of things? I would rather have discussions on how should we jointly collaborate to make better the world, rather than fight over who should be dominant and who should do this and who should do those sorts of things. Because that's really where it's been in the past, say 40 years, we've been moving the world forward.
Paul, let's talk about the reality that's in front of you right now, though. Regardless of the conversations that can happen between Huawei and the government, you're now looking at essentially big chip makers like TSMC not being able to supply directly to Huawei. I know you have upped your R&D to try and become more self-reliant, but what does Plan B look like for you right now if you are not able to source from the companies that you usually do?
Well, Mr. Guoping this morning and later this afternoon has given the company statement, and unfortunately, I'm only going to stick to the company statement, which is we're going to evaluate what are the alternative options. We're going to study exactly what the US Department has stated is going to become the new law, and then we're going to figure out and see how we play in accordance with that law. But of course, our R&D expenditure goes into diversification of supply chain, whether we purchase from other people, whether we design and build it ourselves, or whether we design out those components that are going to be difficult and take alternative paths. I mean, that's what any company would do.
Paul Scanlan is Huawei's Chief Technology Officer from the Carrier Business Group. We appreciate your being here on The Move.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.